When you are in the news business, generally speaking, you don't want to be in the news. But that's where a lot of media figures found themselves this year. Some for the better, some for the worse. First, the bad news.
I made a mistake in recalling the events of 12 years ago.
Caught in a bizarre series of exaggerations, from being under fire in Iraq to seeing dead bodies after Hurricane Katrina, Brian Williams was booted from the nightly news. Facing similar charges, Fox News Channel's Bill O'Reilly, who claimed he witnessed combat covering the Falklands War.
And I was out there pretty much by myself because the other CBS News correspondents were hiding in the hotel.
Despite bitter blowback from CBS's Bob Schieffer and others, O'Reilly escaped unscathed. Not surviving, NBC Chief Medical Editor Nancy Snyderman, who violated a self-imposed quarantine after coming into contact with an Ebola patient in Liberia.
I have my doctor hat and I have my journalist hat.
But Snyderman soon stepped down, in part because she became the story. Also sorry, ABC News anchor George Stephanopoulos, who donated $75,000 to the Clinton Foundation and continued to cover the Clintons without disclosing to viewers or his bosses.
I now believe that directing personal donations to that foundation was a mistake.
The donation cost him the role as moderator for an upcoming GOP debate. Two social critics with nothing to be sorry for, Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart.
It's been an absolute privilege.
Both Stewart and Colbert made dramatic moves this year, as speculation swirled about how they would land.
We made it to day 2, everybody.
All is well. Also about to land well, news anchor Maria Stefanos, who quit Fox 25 on principle earlier this year.
I've decided that it's the right time for me to move on.
Now she's being wooed by NBC and several local channels. And finally, the Washington Post Tehran bureau chief, Jason Rezaian, who was convicted in an Iranian court of espionage.
Jason did nothing wrong.
Post editor Marty Baron is keeping the story alive, hoping public pressure will lead to Rezaian's release after almost 18 months in captivity. Of course, that's just a horrible story. He's been in that jail for 18 months, the Evin prison. He's lost a lot of weight. He's in poor health. I have to say, though, one of the people in the news that bothered me the most, Frank, was Nancy Snyderman. I had tremendous respect for her. She was a great medical, no-nonsense reporter. And yeah, she made a mistake, but, you know, she had been 2 weeks and she wasn't sick. And I just felt like, you know, so she went out to get pizza or something.
Wait, I thought you were saying what really bothered you was that she broke her own self-violated quarantine.
It was a
after possibly coming into contact with Ebola, a fatal illness that was terrifying the entire world at the time. How can you
I didn't think it was worth
didn't
losing her
expect to keep your
job over.
How can
it wasn't nearly in the realm of what.
If you're a medical reporter and you turn yourself into a public health hazard, to me that's just
so
untenable.
Overstated. Well, I felt bad.
Well, she left before her 2 weeks, actually.
Yeah.
You know, she was supposed to be in a place where she was supposed to be. So I'm with Adam on this. Really, you're the person saying, stay in, this is what we do, this is how to insure you, and then she breaks it? Come on, for a pizza? Really? No.
I think the one of these that surprises me the most is that the George Stephanopoulos thing seems to have come and gone without much notice, no consequences, other than, you know, I mean, he gets out of having to moderate a Republican debate. That's not exactly punishment.
His two colleagues are doing it instead, which is kind of...
Yeah, it is kind of weird, but I mean, you know, he broke one of the first rules of journalism.
He didn't know, he's not a journalist.
75, well, yeah, I mean, as we found out,
Yeah.
$75,000 to the Clinton Foundation. Now, I will grant you that when he made the donation, the Clinton Foundation was not as radioactive as it later became, but it just still seems that that's the first thing you don't want to do.
He didn't even get a suspension, did he?
No, nothing.
And then he had all those opportunities to say, because he was interviewing Clinton and they were talking about foundation stuff, and he never said.
That's right.
You know.
Well, look, the common denominator in many of these cases is these people embarrass their employer in one way or another. And that's a big-time no-no when you're in this business. I mean, routinely, at least in the TV business, in the contracts we sign, there's a, for lack of a better phrase, a morals clause, where if you get busted or you do something that's even legal but extremely embarrassing to your employer, you can be canned. And, you know, that's the way of the world. These people got to watch it. I think in the case of Brian Williams and Stephanopoulos, Bill O'Reilly certainly, mammoth egos spiraled out of control and clouded judgment, and that's what happens.
But none of them got fired
None
except
of
for
them did.
Nancy.
None of them got fired.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
they had value that transcended the
well,
damage
that's the point,
done.
and that's the point about Brian Williams, because really what he did was egregious.
Totally agreed. I mean, but I also would say that I think Stephanopoulos was just as bad in his own way, and Nancy Snyderman was as bad. I don't understand, like Dan was saying, I don't understand why I mean, it's your point about value, I guess, but why he was able to survive that. I think I even said on Beat the Press, when we were talking about it at the time, I didn't see how he could cover this entire campaign moving forward, but here he is.
And in hindsight, he lucked out not having to moderate a Republican debate, seeing the beating that some moderators have taken this year. That's right.
Yeah, I think he would have been probably better at it in some respects, though.
You know, a word about Jason Rezaian.
Yeah.
I mean, this has been a big year
Yes.
for the Washington Post. They've gotten a lot of good press for how the improvements they've made, the excellence of their journalism, and it's kind of been a celebratory year for them. And yet, this Jason Rezaian thing has been hanging over them for more than 500 days now, and there doesn't seem to be any resolution in sight. You know,
Trump is keeping it alive.
Trump is keeping it alive too. Marty Baron is active on Twitter, and he uses his feed
does.
to just keep putting the focus on Jason Rezaian all the time.
And I just want to add, I think we also saw the Obama administration's contempt for journalists and journalism come through in their lack of interest in making a big enough issue of
Out of
Mr.
that,
Rezaian's fate.
when they did the negotiations
Exactly.
with Iran.